Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside Government for the spring 2019 semester here at Cayuga Community College. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. This is a show that's shown on Spectrum, Verizon, and Fios, as well as Win 89.1, the college's radio station. It's at least played on that. The OWASCO Lake Watershed Management Council has just hired a new executive director, Dr. Adam EFFLER, who started his new job literally yesterday. He, along with OWASCO Town Supervisor Ed Wagner, who is the chair of the Management Council, are here to talk about his new job as well as the work of the Watershed Inspection Program as well as the Management Council. Welcome back. Congratulations on your new job.
Thank you, Guy.
Where are you located? What are you doing for this first 24 hours besides Ed Wagner setting you up to get over here?
Well, I've been trying to make some contacts. I've been working through some admin, trying to get my paperwork in order. I've been excited to have conversations with soon-to-be colleagues and partners in the watershed.
So for those who don't know, the watershed is what?
The watershed it's like a bathtub, and with the walls being the sides of the lake where the hills are, anything that when it rains, the water goes into that pool.
And how large is the OWASCO watershed?
It's about 205 square miles.
And that covers how many counties?
3 counties, Tompkins, Onondaga, and mostly Cayuga County.
So it's bigger than the Skaneateles watershed?
Yes.
And then it literally gives water for those who are on systems like OWASCO or Auburn, about 60,000 people or more?
Approximately, yep.
Okay. And who's responsible for the watershed?
Actually, by law, the town of OWASCO and the city of Auburn is purveyors of water. Both we have drinking facilities, and so we have the legal obligation to oversee it.
Now, can you impose regulations on individuals?
We have regulations in place right now. They're called rules and regulations. They were adopted in 1986, and we are in the process right now. We've been working on revising those rules and regs for about 18 months now, and we're hoping actually next Thursday, the 21st, I'd probably be the first to announce this, that we're going to have the members that are around in OWASCO, town board members, attend the city council meeting on the 21st to go over the final draft that we're going to present to the stakeholders and to the public.
So the Management Council oversees the inspection program?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so let's talk about the Management Council first. What is it?
Management Council right now is a group of 7 municipalities, including the city of Auburn, town of OWASCO, and Niles, Scipio, and Fleming.
Everybody get one vote?
Everybody gets one vote. Okay. And the Management Council is a 501c3 that collects the money from the town of OWASCO and the city of Auburn. And we do a budget and we allocate those funds.
So when you say you collect the money, that is for the usage of those who use the water systems. It's a fee on top of their water bill.
Correct. Right now, both the city and town does it differently, but what we do is we just upped our contribution to the management fund.
You're talking about the town of OWASCO.
Town of OWASCO. We are contributing $20,000 this year. In the past, we were contributing. Last year, we contributed $15,000. And so the way we did it in the past, we charged every home that received municipal water, we charged them $1 a quarter to receive that went toward the Management Council. Since a lot of our efforts not only affect the drinking water people, it affects the people on wells, we decided this year to take that $15,000, raise it to $20,000, and we took it out of the general fund so that everybody in the town of OWASCO pays evenly for that service.
And then in the city, that is a bill on top of their water bill, correct?
They include it in their rate, and so it's
part of the
part of the current bill that they receive. Yes.
So you are the chair of the Management Council. Eileen McNabb Coleman is the vice chair.
That's correct.
Okay. Who represents the city?
Debbie McCormick.
Okay. So let's talk about as we kind of funnel this down, the watershed program is what? Is that just an inspection program or is it an education program? What exactly is it?
The watershed inspection program, The watershed inspection program are the boots on the ground. They're out there and they're taking calls and they're investigating any type of violations that may occur. They're the ones that enforce the rules and regulations.
So is it inspections on their own, or inspections only when they receive a complaint?
Both. They're out there vividly looking for and doing preventative maintenance. We would prefer to do more preventative maintenance, but when we do get that call, when there's a storm or a 75-year storm, we're out there investigating the damage and looking at things that we can do to prevent that from situations from happening again.
So on average, how many inspections do you do in a given year?
Well, recently we've been publishing the work that the watershed inspector's been doing in the local paper, the Citizen, and I would estimate we're probably doing hundreds of inspections each year, and but many of those don't make the newspaper. We do the more serious offenses.
Okay, and so when you do an inspection, can somebody be fined? Can it just be a demand for remediation? What do they have to do?
What the watershed inspector does is if he sees a violation through the health department, he will write up a violation, and first we try to seek compliance before we do that, and if there is no compliance, then what we will do is cite a violation, and he would have to appear in front of the health department board, and they will listen to the case, and they have the ability to find the individual or seek remediation.
So give me an example of what a fine would be. $100, $1,000?
It could be, well, in most cases we find people, mostly could be anywhere from $100 to $2,000s of dollars.
And where does that money go?
That goes back to the mostly to the county health department.
So it doesn't necessarily come to the management council to do that. How large a staff do you have?
Currently, right now, we're down to one person. In the past, we had the watershed specialist, and we had one full-time inspector, and then we had some seasonal help. And so, with Adam on board right now in the management council overseeing this, would be Adam and Drew Snell, who is our watershed specialist.
So, when you say seasonal help, were those volunteers or were they paid help?
They're a paid position. Usually we got grad assistants from from Syracuse University. They came over and worked, who are interested in the field that they're pursuing.
Okay, I wanted to get all that out of the way so that we can talk about you now, because that's
Sounds
the real
good.
reason we're having you here. So when did the council make the decision that you needed to bring in an executive director to help with your operations?
Well, there are many different organizations in the area that are trying to do the same thing. And one of the things that we saw that there was a need for was to have one person coordinate the efforts of many, and so that we're not duplicating services. And so about a year and a half ago, the conversation began. And then when we did our budget for 2019 in the summer of 2018, we decided, that it was definitely needed. So when the organization, the Management Council, was first started about 12 years ago, we replicated a organization over at Canandaigua Lake, and many people went over there and looked at what they were doing and simulated in many ways what they did. And so we came back and we started the organization. And the Management Council, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but
well, what were you looking for in a new executive director? Because this would be the first.
We're looking for someone to organize all of the groups to help find what the needs are, to find needs of the watershed, to not only know what the needs are, but to look for funding, and then to help implement those strategies that are needed to bring them to fruition to prevent further degradation of the water.
So you had about 30 applications?
We did.
Why'd you pick this gentleman?
I think his credentials speak for themselves.
They're lengthy, and we're going to go through them in a second, but was there something that stood out?
Besides his knowledge, his personality, his ability to communicate, his willingness and passion I think he puts the environment above all else, and he's very passionate. Comes from his family history behind water quality, speaks for itself, and based on those reasons and being local, and he knows a lot of the players in the area. Many of the, for example, Dave Matthews, we hire and we work with on a regular basis.
Not the band director.
Not the no.
Or singer.
But he has a lot of connections, and based on those factors, a lot of people know him, and I think he's able to hit the ground running, and he's exactly what we need in our watershed.
So where are you originally from?
I'm from Syracuse, New York.
Okay, but you did your undergraduate work where?
In Vermont, the University of Vermont.
And what was your concentration?
Environmental science.
So you've been in this field for about 20 years, it looks like, from your resume?
That's correct, yeah.
And you did your graduate work where?
At the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry.
Okay.
Both for the master's and the PhD.
And what was your concentration there?
First was environmental engineering, and then I went back for aquatic science.
Okay, so you also are leaving a job with Onondaga Environmental Institute.
Correct.
For those who don't know what that is, and I'm one of those, what is that group?
OEI is a nonprofit organization, and it's a multidisciplinary group. They work in environmental planning, education, restoration, and research projects. Most of their work is involved in Onondaga County, and a lot of it involves the Onondaga Creek as well as Onondaga Lake projects.
And what were you doing for them?
I acted as a project scientist, and my role was to coordinate projects. Some of them had to do with getting through regulatory hoops for implementing culvert projects, culvert replacements for fish passages, planting and implementing projects for planting riparian buffers, which are streamside forest buffers that are intended to stabilize sediments, improve habitat, and also filter pollutants that enter the stream body.
And so you've had a lot of field work over the last 10, 15 years. What have you been doing?
Yeah, so I started as a field technician at State Freshwater Institute, and I served that role for...
that is different than the one at Hobart. That is...
That's a Syracuse-based nonprofit research institute.
The other one's the Finger Lakes Institute, which is out of Hobart, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. And so my work involved real-time monitoring equipment. So we operated robots out on water bodies that could give us real-time information, water sampling, and then that position evolved into a research scientist position where I was actually a part of developing reports and helping to provide information that was necessary for important water quality models.
And you've been published several times?
Correct.
What has been your field when you've done, what have you been writing about?
Most of my research is in water quality optics. My work on Cayuga Lake, and that had to do with developing coefficients that related what we see in the water column to what optical effects could be measured in a scientific way. And some of those things were important in terms of modeling what we would expect for water quality following intense storm events.
Okay. Would it also deal with what will grow in the lake as well when you say optics?
Yes, yeah. So there are algal particles, and they contribute a great deal to whether or not a water body is clear. My first publications, and one that I think most highly relates to my work as it will apply on OWASCO Lake, had to do with primary production, which is specifically the growth of algae in a lake as a response to nutrient inputs to the water body.
So you basically have a job for life in this industry.
I believe that's the case, Guy.
Well, because it seems like this is not an issue that's going to go away. It's only going to continue or exacerbate over time.
I believe that's the case. Yeah, I do.
Do you have from a scientific point of view, do you have a reason why algal blooms are, they've been here, I think we've had somebody on from the OWASCO Watershed Lake Association. They've been here forever, but they've built up, and they're now this toxicity that we hadn't seen, let's say, a decade or 2 decades ago.
Yeah, so there are many leading scientists that are working on this issue right now. And the causes of these harmful algae blooms are not clear. I think the belief is that there are multiple pieces at play, interacting pieces. Typically, the nutrient that has been managed in water bodies is phosphorus. It's considered the limiting nutrient that is in shortest supply relative to the needs of an organism to grow. Some of the newer science is leading towards an indication that nitrogen may play more of an effect in a water body. We have invasive quagga mussels that, as part of their filtering processes, they excrete back nutrients back into the water column, and that appears to have an effect. And there's also global climate change effect. We have scientists that have observed that stratification or the layering of water throughout the summer months that's starting earlier and it's lasting longer, and that those conditions are ideal for algae growth.
So you were asking before, I think we've been doing this show for 18, 20 years, and it just comes up all the time. Is it, you would then say it's not just one item, it could be a combination of several items. So for example, we've heard everything from agriculture to development to people putting weed and feed on their lawns. If you're a town supervisor, you want development, but development that comes with people paving areas where there's no permeability there, it goes into the lake. You have agriculture, which is a contributing factor. Do you see it as a larger picture of many parts?
I most certainly do, yes. Watersheds are complex, and I'm well aware that the Cayuga County has a rich history of agriculture, and it's important to the economy here, and I'm hoping that we can work with farmers on some of the potential nutrient issues that are resulting from practices in farming. But I also believe that there are other effects, in that there are solutions that everyday people and everyday landowners can be a part of if they are aware of their contribution to the watershed.
And I'm assuming the Management Council is not taking a position on these CFOs, these consolidated
CAFOs.
CAFOs. Have you taken a position on that from an agricultural point of view? Because I know that's been, some groups have blamed CAFOs for being part of the problem.
I can say that everybody's part of the problem, but I think CAFOs are highly regulated, and they, for the most part, they are following strict rules that are imposed upon them. In our watershed, we have about 240 farms, of which maybe 4 or 5 are CAFO farms, and the rest are not regulated. So I think when we look at a whole picture, part of the rules and regulations that we're writing right now is to look at the whole farm process and look at each farm individually, so that we can't have a blanket rule for everybody, because the topography of the land is different for each thing. Why would we want to put buffers on the downside slope of a stream when it's not needed? So we need to look at each farm individually, and with that many farms, for example, Skaneateles only has about 60 farms in the whole watershed, and we have 240. And so,
in a much bigger area.
In a much bigger area. So the complexity of instituting rules and regulations, it has to be, we're doing our best. They haven't been updated since 1986, so we're hopefully it goes to the state by the end of the summer.
So of the inspections that are done, clearly you're indicating that the 5 or 6 of the larger farms, they're regulated heavily by the state.
Yes.
Do you look, does the council look at those other 234?
Yes, and that's what Drew's out. When we say Drew Snell, our inspector or our specialist, is boots on the ground. We would love to be able to afford to get more people out there doing more inspections on a regular basis in assisting those people who need the guidance and advice. I mean, a lot of people, let's face it, there's not a lot of profit in farming these days.
Well, the reason I asked this is because 235, that's in one person, that's a lot of inspections.
It's a lot of inspections.
Can you do that? Can you do them, and this is not criticism, can you do justice to an inspection if you only have 1 person or 2 people and do all those farms plus everything else that you have to do?
Well, I think I think the key here is going to be to write rules that people are able to do and able to to follow through on, and to help them and educate them. You know, when we did one of our stakeholder groups, it was the agricultural farmers community, both crop farmers and agricultural farmers, and what we found was many of the farmers didn't even know that we had rules and regulations. So I think the first step is to adopt a simple set of rules that people can follow, and then two is to educate people on those rules and then try to enforce those rules if they're violated. I think most people, and give them a grandfather window of opportunity to get those things done, not in a short period of time, but phase it in over a period of time.
And are you reviewing these, or have you already reviewed what's being submitted in the next 2 weeks?
I am reviewing them, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Any major changes at this stage?
Not yet, yeah.
Okay.
I'm still working on reviewing.
So why'd you want this job?
It's important to me to be doing what I consider meaningful work in the environment. And I feel that as a director I can effectively make progress in a way that is momentous.
So the supervisor said you have a long family tradition in this. I'm going to follow up on that. Have you had family in this field as well?
Yes. My father, Stephen EFFLER, was the director of the Upstate Freshwater Institute.
Oh, okay.
He was the founder and the director for many years.
So in the short term, what are some of your goals?
Ultimately, my greatest goal with this particular position is to protect the watershed, restore the watershed in a way that will protect our lake and ultimately the community. I see that water quality is a critical issue, especially when we're talking about a drinking water supply, not to mention recreational uses and such. I think that it's really important for us to work in a collaborative manner. As Ed mentioned, I know and am aware of there are many partners and agencies that are working together, and I think it's very important for us to be efficient. To make sure that redundancies are in place where they're meaningful, and otherwise we are moving forward with new projects that are meaningful.
So on just that particular note, when you had the interview committee, I thought I read in one of the articles, you had different stakeholders as part of the at least the initial interview, maybe not the interview, but reviewing the applications?
No, we had them in the final.
Okay. In the final,
we selected 3 finalists, and they were part of the final interview process.
And somebody representing agriculture?
Yes.
Somebody from the WASCO watershed?
Several from AWA.
Okay.
A very, very passionate group that cares deeply about the watershed, and so they were there at every interview and asked very point-blank questions to each candidate, and they did a great job.
Okay. And what do you see your role as an educator in all this process?
To me, that role is the crux of what will be necessary to move this program forward. I really believe that, I believe in power in numbers, and I think that if people become more aware of their impact on their environment and how their land use within the watershed affects their lake and their drinking water source, I really think that we can move things forward in a big way.
And I know he's a little bit about the money in the sense that you need to pay for your operations.
Right.
So will you be doing grant writing as well?
Yes, yeah, that'll be a big piece of my work.
And is that something that you have targeted already, some funds you're going to go after at this stage?
Yeah, there are some. I have some lined up in my inbox right now. So there are some smaller ones that I want to start with. There are Trips for Trees grants that are available through the DEC that can help with some of the stream buffering projects that I'm looking to implement.
What do you see as the biggest challenge right now?
I think the biggest challenge is getting everyone on board about how important this is.
So collaboration is going to be the key to your success.
Collaboration, yes, absolutely.
What resources haven't been brought to bear for inspection or for protecting the watershed that really needs to be put front and center?
So the OWASCO Lake watershed is unique in that the size of the watershed relative to the size of the lake is larger than any other Finger Lake. And that being said, considering the fact that the land use is dominated by agriculture, our watershed is vastly bald. And one of the most cost-effective and efficient ways we can protect and restore the watershed is to figure out where we can plant trees. And so I will be working in the community to find tree planting locations. And so I think that's something I hope that we can actually get landowners on board with.
And is that largely along tributaries and the lake, or where are you talking about trees where?
So yeah, so there are priority locations, and most of those would be along the tribs. Some of them would be along the shoreline as well. But the idea is to try to filter and stabilize some of the land near the water.
I don't want to end this without talking a little bit about what's going on in OWASCO, because you have taken a leadership role with the Water Quality Management Council, but you also are doing some things in the town as well.
Correct.
So you received a large grant 2 years ago. There was a ceremony up at the pavilion where Governor Cuomo came, and that money was for what?
There was a $2 million grant that we shared with the city of Auburn. OWASCO did end up with $1,050,000, and the city got the $950,000. That was for the temporary solution for OWASCO and a permanent solution for the city of Auburn. We went to a granular activated carbon system that purifies the water. As you know, we had microcystin water in our finished drinking water several years ago, as well as the city did. And through many research processes, we determined that the granular activated carbon was the best process for us.
So is the town paying for that continuation now, if the money's run out?
So right now, for the first 2 years, it paid for all of the first 2 years, every penny for the first 2 years, and it actually purchased the 2 units. And now we're looking to make it permanent. We got the final approval from Health Department to make it permanent, and we're looking at a $3.5 million project, of which we're going to get a 60% grant from the state. Okay. So at $2.1 million grant, we have to come up with the remaining $1.4 million.
And you provide water for both the town of OWASCO and the town of Fleming, correct?
That's correct, okay. Yes.
So how many users roughly in there?
Roughly about over 3,500.
And will they pay the bonds off when you have to make that type of investment?
Well, yes and no. The town of Fleming, we just increased our rate, and because we increased our rate, their rate does increase as well, and so they're going to be contributing additional $40,000 a year toward the capital cost of those projects.
You're also doing some sewer work as you go out towards Rockefeller Road out there. I call it the third phase, but I don't know if that's what the town...
That's exactly what it was, yep.
Where are you right now on that?
We have officially completed that project. We approximately put 190, we took 190 people off of septic and put them on sewer, and which, according to most studies, about 15% of all the nutrients that go into the lake come from sanitary septic.
And will there be a fourth phase at some point?
No, we don't have the capacity to do that.
Okay. So I'm going to end with this particular one. 25 years ago, the thought was we need to have sewer lines around the whole lake.
Correct.
From an infrastructure point of view and investment, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
Will that solve the problem from a science point of view?
I don't believe that will solve the problem. I think that there's a great need for improvement and replacement of old septic systems. I think there needs to be an initiative whereby new construction includes renovation of old septic systems. They degrade over time as well. So there's more to it than that.
One of the things that we are working with real quick is that Nature Conservancy is in here helping us with a grant that was provided by the Fred L. Emerson Foundation, and they are looking at a possible grant. One of the locations on the lake is Indian Cove, which has a cluster of many homes down there, and it's on shale, and the septic is right there.
Where's Indian Cove for those?
Indian Cove is on the southeast side of the lake, down toward in some...
where the day camp was for many, many years.
Way past
Way
that.
past
Right,
that.
just past
Okay.
that, yes. So
before Cascade in that area.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But right now, if we're looking for a grant, if we can take that, say 40 homes right there that we know that are contributing to the lake, and we can do a centralized sewer system for them and get the funding for that, it takes additional 40 people off the lake. So those are some of the things that we're working with, and one of the agencies that we're working with directly try to find funding to do those kind of projects.
Well, we want to thank OWASCO Town Supervisor Ed Wagner, who is also the chair of the OWASCO Lake Management Council Board, for joining us, as well as introducing the new Executive Director of the Management Council. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Guy.
Adam EFFLER. We'll hope that you'll come on a regular basis to give us updates.
I would be happy to.
And communicate with the general public about what you're doing.
I would be happy to.
We'll be back in just a moment with another edition of Beyond the Front Page. Cuyahoga Economic Development Agency Executive Director Tracy Verrier will be on to talk about what CETA does, as well as an update on other local economic development efforts, including the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, which she co-chairs with Auburn Mayor Michael D. Quill. We'll be back on Thursday with Cuyahoga County Administrator Justin Woods for an update on what's going on at the county, as well as an update on Beyond the Front Page about the Visitor Center with Auburn Business Improvement District Director Stephanie DeVito and Courtney Casper, the new Experience Manager for the Equal Rights Heritage Center in downtown Auburn. Next week, Auburn City Manager Jeff Dugert will be joining us to give us a city update. And on Beyond the Front Page, we'll have Planning Director Steve Lynch and Kivi Van Geest. I don't think I'm saying her name right, but I apologize for that. I'll get it straight for next week, who will discuss next week's input sessions on what should go on at Emerson Park. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can give us your thoughts for future guests on Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page. You can send them to cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you stick around for Beyond the Front Page, but otherwise have a good night and have a great tomorrow. And they'll let us know when we're out.